The desert had no mercy. It stretched endless before Clara Mitchell, swallowing everything in its heat and silence. Her boots, once strong leather, now hung in tatters. The blue calico dress she'd worn with pride back in Missouri dragged through the sand, torn and coated in dust. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. The canteen at her side had been empty since morning. She hadn't seen another soul in days. Just 3 days ago, she'd been part of a wagon train headed west. Hope had filled the air as settlers dreamed of gold and new beginnings in California. Clara had left behind her brother's farm and a marriage proposal she never wanted. She'd traded safety for the promise of freedom. Then the attack came. It happened at dawn. She was gathering kindling when the first shots shattered the morning calm. Horses screamed. Bullets whined past her ears. Whether it was bandits or Indians, she couldn't tell. The camp turned to chaos. Men shouting, women crying, wagons burning. Clara ran. Others ran too, but in the dust and confusion, she lost them all. Now she was alone. The sun glared down like an angry god. The land around her looked like the bones of the world. Red rocks, dry washes, thorns that tore her dress and skin. Even the wind carried no comfort, only heat and the smell of sage. Her legs finally gave out beside a cluster of cacti. She fell to her knees, leaving bloody handprints in the sand. "Please," she whispered to the empty sky. "Please, God." No answer came, only the whisper of the wind and the cry of distant vultures circling above. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "We, Mitchell women, don't give up easy." But Mama had never been lost in the desert. Clara forced herself up again. Movement was life. Stillness was death. She limped forward, following nothing but instinct. When darkness began to fall, the heat gave way to cold. A wolf howled in the distance, then another. Coyotes. Her heart pounded. She had no fire, no shelter, no weapon, only a small rock clutched in one trembling hand. When her foot caught in a hole, she fell hard, pain shooting up her leg. Her ankle throbbed, swelling fast. She couldn't stand. She dragged herself to a rock and leaned against it, her breath shallow. The night crept in, colder by the minute. Stars filled the sky, cold and bright, watching her with silent indifference. "This is it," she whispered. "I'm going to die here." But then, hooves. At first she thought she imagined them, the faint rhythm of a horse moving through sand. Her heart leapt with hope and fear. Maybe a survivor from the wagon train, or maybe the men who attacked. She pressed herself against the rock, holding her breath. The sound grew louder. One horse, steady, confident. Out of the shadows, a rider appeared, tall and straight in the saddle, moving as if he and the horse were one. The moonlight glinted off the metal of a rifle on his back and the long hair that framed his face. Clara's breath caught. Not a settler, not a soldier. Apache. Every story she'd ever heard rushed back like a cold wave. Stories of scalps and savages, of white captives never seen again. She bit her lip to stop a cry. Maybe if she stayed still, he would pass. He didn't. The horse slowed and stopped. The rider turned his head. Even in the half-light, she knew he saw her. He dismounted, moving with quiet grace, every step controlled. Dangerous. Clara raised her rock with shaking hands. It was useless, and she knew it, but it was all she had. He stopped just a few feet away. The firelight from the stars outlined his figure. Tall, lean, dressed in leather and cloth. His face was painted with dark lines she didn't understand. His eyes watched her, unreadable, like a hawk studying a trapped bird. "Do it," she rasped, voice barely more than air. "Just make it quick." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she heard it, the soft sound of water. The man knelt and held out a small leather pouch. Water sloshed inside. Clara froze. He made no move toward her, only extended the pouch with steady hands. Her throat burned. Every instinct screamed not to trust him, but her body betrayed her. She reached out, snatched the pouch, and drank. The first drops hit her tongue like salvation. She drank greedily until a deep voice broke through the night. Slowly, quote. She almost dropped the pouch. He spoke English, rough and accented, but clear. She obeyed, sipping carefully now. When she finally handed it back, he watched her with eyes that seemed older than the desert itself. "You alone?" he asked. She nodded, words stuck in her throat. He glanced at her swollen ankle, the torn dress, the blood on her hands. "Bandits?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. 3 days ago. I ran. He stood, his expression unreadable, then turned toward his horse. Clara's heart lurched. He was leaving, but instead of mounting, he pulled something from his saddle, a thick wool blanket. He came back and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth made her choke up. "Why?" she whispered. "Why help me? I'm white, your enemy." "Stories," he said quietly. "Your people tell many stories." He handed her a strip of dried meat, then crouched by her small rock shelter, gathering brush. Soon, sparks caught, and a small fire flickered to life. Clara stared, unsure if she was safe or dreaming. "You will die here," he said simply. "Cold tonight, sun tomorrow." Quote. "I know," she whispered. "I've made my peace with it." He studied her for a long time. "You do not beg." "Would it matter if I did?" For the first time, something almost like a smile touched his lips. "No." He stood and looked toward the horizon. "I will watch tonight. You sleep." She wanted to protest, to ask more, but exhaustion crushed her. She wrapped the blanket tighter and watched the flames dance in his dark eyes. He was a stranger, an Apache warrior, the very danger she'd been taught to fear. Yet for the first time in days, Clara didn't feel alone. And as she drifted into sleep, she realized the man who could have ended her life had instead given it back. Clara woke to the scent of smoke and the crackle of fire. For one fragile moment, she thought she was back home in Missouri. Then the desert returned, red rocks, cold air, pain in her ankle, and the tall Apache warrior sitting across from her, sharpening a knife with slow, measured strokes. He glanced up when she stirred. "Drink," he said, passing her a small cup filled with warm water. Her throat ached from thirst. "Thank you." He nodded once, his expression unreadable. The firelight painted sharp lines on his face, strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes dark as the earth after rain. There was no cruelty in them, only depth. "What's your name?" she asked softly. He hesitated before answering. "Tazoo." "Clara," she said. "Clara Mitchell." He repeated it carefully, his accent wrapping around the syllables. "Clara." They sat in silence for a while. The sun was rising, painting the desert gold and crimson. Around them, the world seemed impossibly wide. "Can you walk?" he asked. Clara tried. Pain shot through her ankle, forcing a gasp from her lips. "I don't think so." He nodded, as if expecting that. "Then you ride." Before she could protest, he whistled softly. His horse came forward, a beautiful paint with brown and white patches, strong and patient. Tazoo lifted her gently, his hands firm but careful, placing her in the saddle. When he climbed up behind her, she could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body against her back. "Hold," he said, guiding her hands to the reins. They rode through miles of open land, silent except for the sound of hooves and wind. The desert was harsh, but beautiful. Canyons carved by time, cacti blooming with small yellow flowers, vultures circling high above. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "There's water," he said, "half a day's ride." The journey felt endless. Clara's ankle throbbed, her body sore from exhaustion, but she forced herself to stay upright. Tazoo stopped now and then to offer her water or adjust her blanket. He never looked at her long, but his quiet care spoke louder than words. By afternoon, they reached a narrow canyon. Cool shadows wrapped around them as the temperature dropped. The sound of trickling water reached her ears. A spring, clear, pure, hidden among rocks and cottonwoods. Tazoo dismounted first and helped her down. "Drink," he said again. Clara knelt beside the pool, scooping the cold water into her hands. It tasted like life itself. She washed her face and arms, feeling the dust of the desert melt away. When she looked up, Tazoo was tending to his horse, whispering softly in Apache. The animal nickered and pressed its nose to his shoulder. There was a gentleness in the way he touched it that made her chest ache. He returned with dried meat and what looked like herbs. "For pain," he said, crushing them into a cup of hot water. The smell was bitter, but she drank it. As he examined her ankle, his touch was careful but firm. "Not broken," he said, "just twisted. You need rest." "I can't stay here long," she replied. "I need to reach a town." "The nearest is Fort Grant. 4 days, maybe 5. But you cannot walk, cannot ride alone." "Then what do I do?" He considered for a moment. "My mother's sister married a Mexican man. They have a ranch 2 days south. They may help." "May?" He met her eyes. "They fear trouble. White woman brings soldiers, questions. But Maria has kind heart." It wasn't much of a promise, but it was something. As she ate, she found her voice again. "Why did you help me, Tazoo?" He was quiet for a long time, then said simply, "Because I can." Quote, that night, they built a fire near the spring. Tazoo sat across from her, mending a strap of leather. The flames danced between them, casting long shadows on the canyon walls. "You speak English well," she said. "How?" "Mission school," he replied, the words heavy. "When I was young, they took us, cut our hair, beat us for speaking our language, said they were saving us." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shrugged. "I escaped." "But I remember." Silence hung between them. Clara stared into the fire, thinking of all the stories she'd been told, how the Apache were savages, how they killed without mercy. And yet here she was, alive, because of one. "Your people will look for you," Tazoo said quietly. Clara shook her head. "No, they'll move on. Too many dead." "I came west alone." He studied her face, as if trying to understand her. A woman alone in this land is rare. "I thought I'd find freedom," she said softly. "Instead, I found death." "Not dead yet," he said. "No," she agreed. "Not yet." They shared a small laugh, unexpected, fragile, but real. The fire warmed the space between them. After a while, he spoke again, his tone softer. "I had a sister once, younger. She loved the desert, saw beauty in all things. When soldiers came, they killed her, said they brought peace." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." He looked into the flames. "You did not kill her." "But your people did. Still, I am tired of hate. Hate burns everything." She nodded slowly, understanding more than she expected. "Maybe that's why we met." He glanced up. Maybe. The night deepened. Coyotes called in the distance. The fire flickered low, and Tazoo added another branch. "You should sleep," he said. "I will watch." "Why?" she asked. He looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "Because you trust me, even when you shouldn't." Clara smiled faintly. "Maybe I should learn when to stop doing that." "Or maybe," he said, his voice low, "you should trust your heart." The flames cast gold on his face, and for the first time Clara wasn't afraid of him. She lay down by the fire, pulling the blanket close. Above her, stars burned bright as hope. Somewhere across the flames, she heard his voice murmuring in Apache, a song, maybe a prayer. And before sleep claimed her, she thought, perhaps not all the stories were true. The next morning, Clara woke to sunlight, spilling into the canyon. Her ankle was still sore, but the swelling had gone down. The bitter medicine Tazoo made had worked. He was already awake, feeding his horse and checking the sky. "Storm will come," he said quietly. "We ride before it finds us." He helped her onto the horse again, his touch steady, almost careful. They rode south through rough country. The land changed as they went. Canyons giving way to rolling mesas, dotted with sage and low pines. The sky darkened behind them, a wall of black clouds chasing across the desert. When thunder began to roll, Tazoo's arm tightened around her waist. "Hold fast," he said. The storm came fast, wild and furious. Wind howled through the rocks, and sheets of rain turned the ground to mud. Lightning split the sky in blinding flashes. The horse fought to stay steady. Clara clung to the reins, soaked through and shaking. "There!" Tazoo shouted over the storm. He guided the horse toward a cluster of boulders forming a natural shelter. They dismounted and ran for cover as thunder boomed above. Inside the narrow hollow, the wind screamed around them. Tazoo threw his blanket over her, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Stay close," he said. Clara was shivering uncontrollably. Her dress was drenched, the cold cutting straight through her bones. Without a word, Tazoo pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her. She could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady beneath her ear. "It's the only way to stay warm," he said, his voice low but steady. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Every beat of his heart was a promise of life in a world that had nearly taken hers. The storm raged, rain drumming against stone, lightning flashing white and wild. "Tazoo," she whispered after a long silence. He looked down, his dark eyes reflecting the flicker of lightning. "I thought I was ready to die," she said. "And then you came." His jaw tightened. "Maybe fate sent me." "Or maybe you chose," she said softly. He didn't answer. His hand moved to brush a strand of wet hair from her face. The touch sent a tremor through her. She looked up and found him already watching her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "I couldn't stop myself." Their lips met. It wasn't gentle at first. It was desperate, fierce, a release of everything they'd both been holding back. Then it softened, turning into something deeper, something that felt like home. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. The storm still roaring outside, their own storm quieting between them. "This is dangerous," he said quietly. "I know. My people would call me traitor. Yours would call you ruined." She gave a small, tired smile. "Then we're perfect for each other." He laughed, a sound so rare and unexpected that she couldn't help but smile too. When the storm finally passed, they stepped out into a world washed clean. The desert glowed under the sun, raindrops turning to diamonds on the rocks. It felt like a new world, they wrote again, the air cool and sweet after the rain. Clara's ankle still ached, but she said nothing. Ahead lay the small ranch Tazoo had spoken of, but before they reached it, 3 Apache riders appeared on the ridge. Clara recognized one, the older warrior who had argued with Tazoo days before. The men rode down, weapons visible, faces hard. They spoke in Apache, voices sharp and angry. Tazoo answered calmly, though Clara saw his shoulders tense. Then one man pointed at her. His voice rose. The words she couldn't understand, but she didn't need to. She was the reason for their anger. "What are they saying?" she whispered. "They say I betrayed my people," he said, eyes dark. "That I bring danger with you. They say I should leave you for the coyotes." Her blood ran cold. "And what will you do?" He looked at her then, really looked. "I already chose." He said something in Apache, his tone final. The older warrior spat on the ground and turned away. The others followed, disappearing into the distance. Tazoo stood silent for a moment, the wind tugging at his hair. "I am no longer one of them," he said finally. "To them, I am dead." Clara reached for his hand. "You're not dead to me." He closed his fingers around hers, holding on as if to anchor himself. Then he nodded toward the horizon. "Come, we go." By nightfall they reached the ranch. A small adobe house stood against the fading light, smoke rising from its chimney. A woman came out, older, dark-haired, strong eyes that missed nothing. "Tazoo," she said in accented English, "what trouble have you brought me this time?" "This is Clara," he said. She was lost. The woman's eyes softened as she looked at Clara's torn dress and bandaged ankle. "Lost and found," she said. "Come inside." Her name was Maria. She fed Clara, cleaned her wound, and gave her a place to rest. For the first time in weeks, Clara slept in a real bed, under a real roof. In the morning, Maria pulled Tazoo aside. They spoke in Spanish, their voices low but urgent. Clara couldn't understand the words, but she knew what it was about. Her presence, the danger it brought. Later, Maria came to her with a look of quiet sympathy. "You must leave soon," she said. "There are men hunting you. White men. They say you were taken. They will kill him if they find him." Clara's stomach turned. "Then we'll leave." Maria nodded. "There is a hidden valley 3 days south. A place where no one asks questions. Go there." That night, they packed in silence. Maria hugged Clara tightly before they left. "Take care of him," she whispered. "He pretends to be strong, but his heart has been broken many times." Clara promised she would. They rode out under a sky full of stars, heading toward the unknown. Behind them, the ranch lights faded. Ahead lay danger, but also hope. By the third day, bounty hunters found their trail. Gunfire echoed across the rocks. Clara clung to Tazoo as he urged the horse faster. Bullets sang through the air. One grazed his arm, another struck the ground near her foot. "There!" he shouted, pointing to a narrow canyon. They rode through it, the walls closing around them like a secret passage. At last, they broke through onto a ridge, and below stretched the hidden valley. It was green. Real green. Trees, water, and smoke rising from small homes scattered like seeds across the land. As they reached the bottom, figures appeared, men and women of every color and kind. Mexican, Apache, white, black, Chinese, all watching the newcomers. A woman with gray hair stepped forward. "Who are you?" Tazoo answered simply. "People looking for peace." The woman studied them, then nodded. "Then you found the right place." Clara's knees gave out. Tazoo caught her, holding her close. "Home," he whispered. She looked up at him through tears. "Yes," she said softly. "Home." They stayed in the valley, among others who had crossed forbidden lines to build new lives. In time, they married before the whole community, exchanging vows by the stream that had given the valley life. When Tazoo slipped a handmade ring of braided horsehair onto her finger, Clara knew the desert had not taken her life. It had led her to it. That night, as rain began to fall softly on the adobe roofs, Clara whispered to the man who had carried her from death to love, "I love you." He smiled and answered in his language, teaching her the words so she could say them back. In the quiet after the storm, they stood hand in hand, watching the valley glisten in the rain. Against all odds, they had found what the world said was impossible: a home, a future, and a love that no desert could kill.